Hello, thanks for joining me. My name's Matt, I'm a retired engineer, and I've always been fascinated by the history of the Roman world. I hope you will join me on my 300-mile road trip spread over 2 days to show you the evidence I have discovered about my theory for the Roman Dodecahedron. So let's get started. I'm glad that you've decided to join me on our adventure of discovery. I must say that it was a revelation when I first saw what I felt to be something that could be regarded as the evidence I was looking for to help me prove my theory about the purpose of the Roman Dodecahedron, which I saw in an online museum artifact database after much searching. So I couldn't really resist this adventure of visiting the museum and to actually see the exhibit with my own eyes and to share this with my viewers and subscribers. I always like this part of the journey. These are the How Gills you can see here in the distance to my right. This is always part of the bonus of driving north. We are heading towards the wall, Hadrian's wall, the edge of the empire. I brought you to the ancient Roman town of Corbridge, which is situated just 2 miles south of Hadrian's wall, the edge of the Roman Empire itself. The ancient Roman town of Coria, or Corbridge as it is now known, is located on the junction of a major Roman road with the River Tyne and the Roman Staingate Road, which was also the first frontier line which ran east-west between Coria and Luguvallium, or the modern city of Carlisle. Corbridge Roman site is in the village of Corbridge in the county of Northumberland. It is in the guardianship of English Heritage and is partially exposed as a visitor attraction, including a site museum. Here you are looking towards the sites of the 2 large granary buildings, complete with underfloor air circulation ducts. This is the famous Corbridge hoard that was found in 1964, which includes armour, weaponry and tools. In particular, the Lorica segmentata armour that was found in the hoard has led Roman historians to completely rewrite the book about the history of the armour used about this time. This prodigious find provides an excellent time capsule of our Roman ancestors. So here is the Corbridge Dodecahedron. I have just spoken to the museum curator and she tells me that there is nothing really known about the history of the Corbridge Dodecahedron and that it is a complete mystery. No one can say where it was found in Corbridge or even when it was found. It has always been classified as part of the Corbridge Small Finds collection for as long as anyone can remember. Inside this exhibit case, 2 other additional dodecahedra were also on display that were also found along the eastern march of Hadrian's wall. These have now been returned to the Museum of the North in Newcastle. As you can see, the dodecahedron is a beautiful green patinated colour. It has a simple scratched decoration along each of its vertices, which would have transferred into the wax seal impression on the message. One amazing detail that I can see is that the knobs or nodules on each point of the dodecahedron are actually hollow inside. This is probably meant to reduce the weight of the object and reduce the amount of bronze required to cast it. This would have required phenomenal skill in its casting by the maker. We are now coming towards the end of our journey. We're just 12 miles from our final destination, so I thought I would bring you to the Temple of Mithras. This structure that you're looking at is a Roman temple erected around 200 AD and destroyed about 150 years later. It was dedicated to Mithras, the god of an esoterical Roman cult religion that emerged in the 1st century AD, whose inspiration came from Persia in the Eastern Empire. Worship took place in small, secluded subterranean or part-subterranean temples resembling the cave in which Mithras was said to have killed a sacred bull and feasted with Sol, the god of the sun. It is thought that each temple represented the cosmos, where worshippers underwent a spiritual journey from life into the afterlife and feasted in a ritual celebration of Mithras. This was probably why this religion was popular amongst soldiers. Participants progressed through a hierarchy of 7 grades. The initiate entered the religion first of all as a raven. Then he progressed to an occult, then to a soldier. Then he progressed to become a lion, then a Persian. Then he became known as a runner of the sun. Then finally, after many years of study and participation in the religion, he became known as the Father. The Father was the leader or chief priest of the temple. Each step involved an ordeal requiring mental and physical strength in the face of real or threatened peril. As we said, membership was popular among soldiers and the military, and at Carabra, this included 3 commanding officers of the nearby fort, who were patrons of the 3 altars you can see placed at the far end of the temple. The one at the right hand side is particularly interesting, as it is an image of the commanding officer portrayed as Mars, the god of war. A small lamp can be placed in a recess behind this altar to illuminate the headdress that Mars is wearing. So the different levels of status and knowledge that members attained seem to be a strange mixture of being a member of the officers' mess and being a member of the Freemasons, perhaps. You can see that the only entrance to the building is offset to one side to prevent a direct view of the temple's central aisle. As you can see from this reconstruction by English Heritage, this poor, naked, blindfolded young man, as this was a men-only religion, is about to enter the inner temple to take part in an initiation ceremony led by the father of the temple. We don't know for certain exactly what is going to happen here next, but perhaps we can safely say that someone inside this temple would have known the true function of the Roman Dodecahedron. second day of our expedition here, up on the edge of the empire. Behind me is Steel Rig, which is one of the probably most iconic parts of the wall. We're just shorter than 2 miles away from the piece of evidence I was suggesting to you, which we'll go and look at presently. But I couldn't resist a quick trip up here onto Steel Rig just to show you parts of the wall.
I, the wall, defend this place of space. I am control, a ruled line, mark of the safe, the sure, the known. I am the edge, the frontier. This is where the world ends here. Cliff edge, hawk ledge, fox ladder, adder bed, thorn snag, wind rip, rock ruckle, sheep slip, stone dip, deep drop, full stop.
Well, I brought you to the final bit of our destination, the Roman Army Museum. This is where I will show you what I feel is the compelling evidence for my theory about the use of the dodecahedrons. What you will need to appreciate, of course, is the evidence I'm going to show you is organic material, and it has been in the ground for more than 1800 years. Here we are inside the Roman Army Museum at Magna Fort. This museum is partnered with the Vindolanda Charitable Trust. The Vindolanda Charitable Trust organises and supports archaeological digs within this whole area. We are presently looking into the exhibition presentation case showing wooden artefacts that have been excavated at the Roman fort and town of Vindolanda, and also the Magna Fort just 100 yards south of the wall. There are two items in this presentation case that I would like to bring to your attention. As you can see, this first one, item number 659, is a simple wooden disc about 85mm in diameter and about 5mm thick. On its own, this item is pretty unremarkable in itself. It's just a circular disc of wood, you might say. But when you consider it alongside this next item I'm going to show you, I think you will really start to appreciate why I've brought you all this way on such a long journey. Now I would like to introduce you to exhibit number W 1986 109 of the Vindolanda collection. As you can see, this is a broken disc of wood that was originally 86.5mm in diameter and 5.5mm thick. It was found in a ditch at the Vindolanda excavation site in 1986. After I contacted the museum curator who deals with the wooden finds collection, her best guess is that it was made from Norwegian spruce. You can see that the wood has split across the central diameter of the larger 10mm hole in the centre of the disc. What is particularly of interest to us are the two smaller holes about 4mm in diameter, which look like pilot holes that have been bored into the wood close to the periphery of the wooden disc. They appear to be situated approximately 72 degrees apart from one another, allowing for a little distortion in the wood after being in the boggy ground for about 1800 years. Anyone can view this item very easily online, so I will give you the details for this in the notes below. So please take a closer look at this for yourself. Why I think that you should do this is because I believe that about 1800 years ago, a woodworker took one of these simple wooden discs, like the number 659 that I showed you earlier in the museum presentation case, and having bored the central 10mm hole in the centre of the disc, he proceeded to bore the 5 smaller pilot holes in the wooden disc to make a Roman dodecahedron code wheel, very similar to the ones that you will have seen in my first video. In the process of boring the 3rd or 4th pilot hole, the wooden disc unfortunately broke in 2 halves across its centre. As you can clearly see, it has broken in line with the grain of the wood, which has previously been weakened after boring the central 10mm hole. This now useless piece of wood was then discarded in a damp ditch at Vindolanda for us to find about 1800 years later. For a moment, I just want to point out that the order of manufacturing process of an item is very important whilst making something that is susceptible to breaking or becoming useless during the making of an item. This is to reduce the wasted value that is potentially invested in an item before it has been completed into a finished component. It is always most efficient to complete the processes that have the greatest risk of damaging a component during its manufacture first, and then continuing in the order of risk. Which processes remove the greatest amount of material, or which processes put the item under the most stress? For a Roman dodecahedron code wheel, for example, the greatest amount of material removal is in cutting out the round disc, and this I have learnt. Then boring the central hole, which could be large, about 10mm in this case. Then boring the pilot holes. Then fitting the central peg. And finally marking up the disc with its lettering as required. The woodworker who was involved in making the disc would have fully understood the best order of doing things, as he was probably paid on the basis of how many he could make in a given time from the materials available to him. For this broken wooden disc, the continuation of its manufacture as a Roman dodecahedron code wheel stopped here. It was obviously pointless passing it on to the coding officer to write the letters on the disc, so the maker discarded it, cursed a little in Roman perhaps, and started to make the next one a bit more carefully. Maybe there was a slight defect in the wood. Wood is of course a natural material and is not perfect. Because it was a code wheel reject, it has survived to this present day. Had it been completed and finally become a Roman dodecahedron code wheel, it most likely would have not. It would have been very easy to mark out and bore the 4 holes in a circle, as the holes are 90 degrees apart from one another. Also, it would have been very easy to mark out and bore 6 holes in the circle using the circle radius method. But why would the maker particularly choose 5 holes? Why were 5 holes required that 4 or 6 holes wouldn't satisfy? I think that the 5 holes were required to fit the dodecahedron. The diameter of both the wooden discs are similar in size to the ones that I have made to demonstrate my dodecahedron coding theory. As you can see from my demonstrations, 5 is a much more challenging number to divide equally into a circle. I know. Perhaps the maker used a stencil or template to mark out the holes in advance so that all the hole spacings were accurate. The Roman town and fort of Vindolanda was occupied roughly between 85 and 370 AD, so the Vindolanda Tablets themselves provide clear evidence that written messages were regularly sent and received in this locality over a period of roughly 300 years. Up to the present day, nearly 2,000 Vindolanda tablets have been recovered, which is probably just a small proportion of the total correspondence handled in this locality. So it would not be unreasonable for me to suggest that maybe somewhere between 5 and 10% of messages sent and received from Vindolanda could possibly be secret or coded messages. There is nothing to suggest that a Roman dodecahedron was not used in the Roman settlement of Vindolanda and then taken elsewhere, or whether it still lies buried somewhere within this area. Earlier in this video, I showed you that 3 Roman dodecahedrons were found in the northeastern marches of Hadrian's Wall, and you saw the Corbridge Roman Dodecahedron found about 15 miles away from the location where the wooden artifacts were found. I am proposing that the Roman wooden artifacts and the Roman dodecahedron shared the same context in both time and location, so it is possible that they could have been used together. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed our expedition to the edge of the empire and found it interesting. Are you not entertained?